Happy Monday, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of AKP Sports Talk. That's I'm Korea. Look, Ari, we are literally a day away from the start of the WBC. Obviously, the first matchup between the Cubans and the Netherlands is tomorrow, I think, afternoon or tomorrow night. But we have the WBC coming up. We just had the Combine this weekend. It's champ week for all our college basketball fans, March Madness. Look, we talked about it last week. Here it is. This is going to be one of the craziest weeks for sports. How you doing on this early Monday morning?
Yeah, I'm doing great. We had, a ton of great games in the smaller conferences this past weekend in college basketball. And we have some great, championships, semifinal games today. And then starting tomorrow on Tuesday to start out some of the bigger conference tournaments. And so starting tomorrow on Tuesday, we'll have games from morning through night. And that's just the start of it. And then, of course, then we have Selection Sunday. And then we have the tournament starting the next week on Thursday. So between that, NFL, like you said, the Combine, we have free agency coming up, opening up March 15th in about a week and a half or so. And then we have baseball. So like we've been saying, we have a lot on table and a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I guess you can say this is one of the best times of the year for if you're just a sports fan in general. March and October, usually one of the bigger months in terms of everything happening. But since we have a pretty loaded day, we're going to get right into it. Right this past weekend, obviously, we had the NFL Combine, and some of the stars that were coming on, at least getting a little bit of what they're going to be doing in the NFL. We got to see guys, run his 40. We got to see all the draftees, future draftees who wanted to compete, and one in particular, Anthony Richardson. Obviously, he was stealing the show. I mean, he ran a I think it was like a 4.41 40, which is faster than any quarterback has ran in a long time. I mean, he ran faster than Cam Newton and Josh Allen, and we've seen how those quarterbacks in the league have fast legs. He had a 40-inch vertical. He looked like he was looking. He looked like he raised his stock value a lot, right? And I've seen a lot of comparisons with Anthony Richardson, just being the fourth quarterback prospect. And just a few years ago, there was a quarterback prospect that was a little underrated, but now just went to the Super Bowl for this first time. His name is Jalen Hurts. And there's so many comparisons between how those two play and how they play football. Ari, look, I don't know if you got to see any of his highlights this weekend, but I mean, if you did, what do you make of Anthony Richardson? Do you think he can maybe sneak into maybe the top 15 of the upcoming NFL draft for his performance? And is it a little too soon to overhype Anthony Richardson right now?
I mean, I'm never one to take too much stock into the Combine. Personally, but obviously, if you were on social media, then you heard about what he did this past weekend at the Combine. If you look on, I think it was DraftKings or there's some book or just in general, his odds to not only go top 15, but to go number one overall went from like plus 4,000 to like plus 700. So that alone speaks to, the hype and all of that. So, obviously it's been Bryce Young and CJ Stroud that have been the talks to go number one, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities that Richardson goes number one or at least top five, top 3 to 5 in that range. But like I said, I don't take combine numbers too much. I don't let that change my perspective on players to a huge degree. But I mean, obviously, it's better to do really good than really bad at the combine. Obviously, so there's obviously the big questions about about him as a passer, but like you said, there's those same questions about Hurts and all these. There's always questions about players coming out of college, no matter who the player is, and no matter what those questions might be. And so the question is, obviously, a big part is going to be where he lands and what his weapons will be and all of that. So, he probably rose his draft stock the most of any prospect, at that combine. And now we have, about a month and a half or so till the NFL draft. And we'll see if the hype and the stock continues to rise. to the point where he maybe could go number one. At least the odds are saying that there's at least a possibility.
Yeah, and then you look at all the other quarterbacks that did compete in the combine. Obviously, Bryce Young did not want to compete in all the physical things, the 40-yard dash. He did get his measurements in, and that you can only tell so much from someone's measurements, but in terms of what they do on the field, and Bryce Young is always going to be one of the best quarterbacks coming into this draft. We saw C.J. Stroud make some great passes. Will Levis looked pretty good. One guy that really impressed me that I didn't really take into account, Max Duggan. I mean, this guy, obviously he led his team to the national championship, even though they got slaughtered in the national championship game. The fact that, he looked pretty good as a decent pocket passer. He did struggle a little bit, but in terms of someone really putting on a performance, that is Anthony Richardson here. And, it was great to see considering, there's been a lot of questions about him as a passer, obviously, and you mentioned it as well, but the fact that he looked really, really good, is a good sign for some teams to really invest in the guy and, take a shot. Because, the big thing coming up with this upcoming draft is, there's going to be a combination of defensive linemen and quarterbacks taken within those first 5 picks, whether it's Will Anderson, then maybe Bryce Young or something, or maybe Chicago potentially trades the number 1, or, whatever the situation is. Because, Indy also needs a quarterback, and they may trade up, and who knows, maybe with the new Derek Carr news, which we'll get into a little bit, maybe another team like Vegas may want to trade into the first round. So, there's so many, quarterbacks now that are putting on good performances. It was great to see, some good from this weekend's performance, guys, like Max Duggan. We got to see even like Stetson Bennett, obviously after his off the field issues with his arrest, literally after he just won his back-to-back national championship, and he's been getting a little bit of a bad rep just because of his off the field issues. But and then Will Levis is kind of the wild card in all this. A lot of people have been a little critical of him just because of how he really disappointed in this past season at Kentucky, but he still is a good passer, and he can still sling the ball. So there's so many questions, but it was great to see Anthony Richardson, someone who is athletically gifted in himself, like have a 40-inch vertical as a quarterback, which is almost unheard of. So he can definitely get up. A lot of people have compared his play similar to Jalen Hurts in terms of how he can how he can scramble out. The only thing that's the question for him, like Jalen Hurts, was his pocket passing and how he can throw the ball. So, definitely be interesting to see, where Anthony Richardson and some of these top picks land as we get closer to the beginning of the NFL draft. Literally just a little bit over a month away. So, that's going to come by pretty quick. So, and then obviously the start of free agency is coming up soon. And obviously this morning, as we get into our next big thing, breaking news this morning, Derek Carr, he's been one of the quarterbacks that's been linked to many teams, and he's now linked to only one team because he's expecting to sign a 4-year deal with the New Orleans Saints. Obviously, he was one of the Saints were one of 3 teams that were in on Derek Carr. It was the Saints, the Jets, and the Panthers. It's pretty much kind of down to the Saints and Jets, in my opinion. I feel like, the Jets were always linked to Derek Carr. If not them, then I think they're still going to go after Aaron Rodgers. But, Derek Carr, he finds a new home. He's going to New Orleans. He's expected to sign a 4-year deal. And that brings the question, well, what are they going to do with Jameis Winston? They're going to expect to just release him because of salary cap stuff. He's the casualty in this. And, it's sad, but at the same time, it's kind of the only option for this New Orleans team. And so, they're looking to head a new direction with a new quarterback. Ari, look, you can say it's an improvement. You can say what you want. I feel like this is definitely a big step for a weak NFC South division that's going to be next year. What are your thoughts on this Derek Carr signing with the Saints? Does this make them a top 10 offense, maybe with guys like Alvin Kamara coming back potentially with his off the field issues right now with his ongoing court case? A returning Chris Olave. What else do the Saints need to do in order to maybe take that step to the next level? But for now, I feel like is this a good signing for the Saints team?
Yeah, I mean, I think a big reason why he probably is because we say expected because March 15th is when everything becomes official. So it's not officially official, but
Oh wow! Oh well, Rappaport just broke out the deal. It's a 4-year, $150 million deal. So that's the official contract that Derek is getting with the Saints. But go on.
But yeah, I was gonna say, like you said, the NFC South is wide open, especially with Tom Brady, retiring, and not only that, but the entire. You look at the entire conference, and obviously, the AFC, particularly at the top, but just overall, is just a lot better than the NFC. Just flat out. So you're in an easier division, you're in an easier conference, in the NFC South. And so I think those two factors are probably a big reason why, along with the contract and the money, but I assume the Jets would have been willing to offer a similar, I would think. But the Jets have been linked to Aaron Rodgers, like you said. He's still a big question mark whether he retires, stays in Green Bay, or gets traded. He's still under contract, right, with Green Bay, so he has to get traded. So any of those are a big possibility. But yeah, I mean, I think the big reason why Carr is going to likely sign with the Saints is just the easier division and the easier conference in the NFC South. I think it's pretty clear that he's an upgrade over Andy Dalton, regardless of what you want, regardless of how you view Carr. There's obviously a lot of people, when he's in Vegas, there's people who thought Carr was really good and the situation just wasn't good. And then there are some people who thought Carr wasn't as good as some people think he is. So now that he's in New Orleans, where the NFC is pretty much wide open, we'll kind of get to see. Well, as you said, Alvin Kamara is facing a potential suspension. We're still waiting to hear on that. But then, you have Chris Olave, maybe Michael Thomas, depending on his, status. And then, you got Troutman at tight end. I assume that they're going to sign or draft a running back as insurance / as a compliment to Kamara, depending on his status. But they still have Landry, I believe. Landry, Olave, Michael Thomas if he's healthy. And then Jawan Johnson and Troutman at tight end. So, and then you have at least a stable defense, at the very least. So, I mean, they should be the pretty clear favorite in the NFC South, regardless of what the other teams do, unless somehow the Bucs land Aaron Rodgers, they're highly unlikely. But as it stands right now, the Saints will be the huge favorite in the NFC South, and they'll probably be, a top 5 or 6 favorite at least in the NFC overall to make it to the Super Bowl. I mean, just thinking out loud, obviously the Eagles will be, at the top. Niners will still be, up there in the top 2 or 3. The Cowboys just by default will be up there. But yeah, I mean, overall, the NFC is significantly weaker in every area than the AFC. So the Saints are, obviously in a win now mode, just given the state of their team. So we'll see if Carr can help them take that next step. After all they went through with Winston and Dalton last year at quarterback.
Yeah, the thing about this Saints team, right, is that they've won 7-10, obviously, yeah, but one of the biggest problems was the fact that their offense was so, bland as to what previous years, what they've had in terms of Michael Thomas and, the savior of the masses, Drew Brees, with, an Alvin Kamara who, was scoring 6 TDs against the Minnesota Vikings. That offense was so, prolific. And then, after Drew Brees retired, it's always been kind of the, quarterback carousel kind of now Indy's going through, right? It's kind of a reminder of what Indy's going through in terms of their quarterback carousel. And, first it was Jameis Winston, and everyone was kind of hyped to see him, kind of get that new, fresh look on a new team. And then he got injured, and then Andy Dalton had to step in, obviously, and there were no expectations after that. But then Jameis was healthy, but yet he wasn't starting. And so there was, questions on whether or not the Saints team is just going to come from the bottom up and just completely rebuild. And I guess their questions have been answered, intending to release Jameis Winston, obviously as a salary cut casualty due to the fact that they're intending to sign Derek Carr for a 4-year, $150 million deal, which, I mean, that's I mean, he's getting $37.5 million a year, and that's pretty good for Derek Carr. I definitely think that for this Saints team, it's a big step in a weak AFC South. NFC South, excuse me, as you mentioned, the AFC a lot more competitive than the NFC, and we saw that last year, and it's going to be pretty much the same this year. But now, the Saints maybe take a little bit of a step forward in terms of a weak NFC South, which teams like the Buccaneers, who are pretty much falling off. We've seen the fact that Tom Brady's retiring. They're intending to release Leonard Fournette. This morning, I heard about Devin White's cryptic message on Instagram where he's saying, like, thank you to Buccaneers, saying that, he may be going somewhere else soon. And then the Panthers, they're obviously in a rebuilding phase as well, kind of from the ground up, from a new coach, and potentially a new quarterback, whether it's within the system or outside. And then the Falcons are, they're right there, but they're definitely still, in the process of rebuilding. Their defense is getting a lot better, but their offense just needs a lot more work in terms of finding that QB because, it was Marcus Mariota, now it's not. And then they also went to Desmond Ridder with their second-round pick last year, and, it wasn't as impressive as a lot of people were saying, but it's definitely a step, right? And you can definitely credit this Saints team. They were always looking to Derek Carr. They were looking to a quarterback, but another problem is, like, who's going to be around Derek Carr because, as we mentioned, Alvin Kamara, who's facing his off-the-field issues right now with his court case, he could be suspended for the upcoming season. And Michael Thomas, with him being as fragile as glass, who knows if he's going to be showing up for a full season or not, even if it's in New Orleans uniform or not. Who knows about that? But, they definitely still have Chris Olave, and he's an exciting factor. So I'm excited to see maybe his value get a big increase after putting up a pretty good rookie season with Andy Dalton as his quarterback for most of the season. So, this is definitely a big move for the Saints team. They definitely needed to make a move in order to kind of at least push them to the front of the NFC South right now, which I don't expect to have another good season as well. But, and obviously there's no official signing, obviously, with free agency. I think it's in a week. I don't know the exact day when free agency opens, but at least we know Derek Carr will be expected to sign with the Saints on a 4-year, $150 million deal, and that's kind of, I guess, the first biggest move. And then you mentioned with all the other quarterbacks that were that were rumored to sign. All the other teams that were rumored to sign Derek Carr. The Jets, they're prioritizing Aaron Rodgers, and you mentioned that Aaron Rodgers, the Packers are, I guess, going to have to take some of that contract in if anyone wants to trade because, it's just a fat contract of what he has. I think it was like $58 million guaranteed, which is already pretty steep. So, and maybe the Jets are kind of just the favorites or the only team really going for Aaron Rodgers. But we'll see what else happens in this kind of almost tampering / NFL free agency opening up period as we get to see, who's rumored to where and all that stuff. We'll provide you with some more information as it comes out in the following weeks. But we're going to switch up here. We are going to be now covering baseball as we get ready for the WBC. For those who don't know what the WBC is, it's kind of like the World Cup for baseball. It is 4 different pools with multiple different teams representing each nation that makes it to the World Baseball Classic. They compete in the pool, and there's a bracket to determine who will be the best, I guess, team for baseball. I believe there are 20 teams. I don't remember the total. I know there's 4 pools.
Yeah, 4 or 5.
Yeah, exactly. There are 4 or 5 pools. It all starts tomorrow, and there are 4 different locations for where all of these games will be playing. There's games in Phoenix, Arizona. There's games in Miami, Florida. I believe there's some in Korea or Japan, and then I think there's some in Taiwan. I forgot where the final destination is, but this is definitely going to be one of the more exciting ones. Exciting World Baseball Classics as we look, because it's been a while since we got the last one. Obviously, I believe it was 2017. That was the last one we got. That seems like an age ago. That's 6 years ago. And, the teams are looking so much different than what was 7 years ago. Ari, First, I mean, we can talk about the United States for a second. That's that's the home team right here. They've come into this with, I guess, some expectations of winning, but it's not going to be an easy challenge with the rosters that I've seen from all around the world that are looking a little stacked. But the United States have a pretty good chance of winning. What do you like from this United States team? Obviously, it's looking like the lineup is going to feature Paul Goldschmidt at first. They're going to have Trout in center. Mookie Betts probably in right field. Arenado at third. Pete Alonso, McNeil at second. Real Muto, Schwarber, Turner, Tucker. Most of those guys are well-known guys in this MLB. With how talented they are, with Goldschmidt and Arenado being NL MVP candidates. McNeil having the batting title, Mookie Betts being an all-around player. We've seen what Mike Trout can do. He's a whole nother level of greatness. Trey Turner with his speed, Kyle Tucker with his bat, Schwarber with his bat as well, and then JT Realmuto, one of the best catchers in the game. What do you like from this American team right now in terms of their shot at winning the World Baseball Classic in this tournament?
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that the lineup is the most notable part of the team. The pitching is somewhat solid, but if they're going to win, it's going to be because of the lineup. I feel like what I like the most is I feel like in the past, World Baseball Classics, there's been some, of the top USA American players on the team, but not everyone fully committed. But I feel like this year, I think with the last one being canceled, I think it was COVID. That was around the COVID time, and it was canceled. So I feel like with that, the last one, the last event being canceled, people didn't take it for granted as much now. And so I feel like now we're seeing more of the best of the best American, particularly the hitters, representing USA here in the World Baseball Classic. Obviously, I get the hesitation that some people have. It's kind of a weird time to host this event, right before the season is going to start, because obviously you're playing more than you would in spring training, so that leads to more injury risk and all that. So that's kind of why it's a weird time of the year to host this event. But I feel like we're seeing more, particularly the hitters, the best of the best, representing USA. Obviously, like you said, Trout, Turner, Betts, Goldschmidt, Arenado. I think Harper would have played if he wasn't hurt. Real Muto, Anderson, Tucker, Alonso. So I think pound for pound, it's close with the DR, but I would say the USA has the best, lineup 1 through 9 in the field. Again, not the best pitching, but I think it could be serviceable enough to be good enough given what the lineup is capable of doing. But yeah, I think all in all, I think it's just the commitment that the best players have, that they're willing to represent the U.S. in this event, I think is what probably stands out the most to me overall.
Yeah, you look at the United States full roster, right? And the only concern that you can really say is the pitching, obviously, with a lot of opt-outs recently with guys like Nestor Cortez, who unfortunately got injured, and then you have Clayton Kershaw, which is still a mystery to this day on why he's not eligible, but you can't really whine about it too much. But this team still has some solid relievers in guys like Devin Williams, who's one of the better relievers in baseball. Before Jared Kelenic took him to center field yesterday. Let's get that cleared. But one of the biggest, you can say, lackluster things about this United States team is the fact that they had so many star pitchers, and yet all of them are slowly leaving, and that leaves guys, Kyle Freeland and Lance Lynn and Miles Mikolas and Ryan Presley, who's a great closer, but he's not going to be starting games. We still have Brady Singer, Merrill Kelly, Kendall Graveman. There's not a star, a Cy Young kind of caliber. Obviously Adam Wainwright, who was, but for God's sake, Adam Wainwright's almost 41 here, competing in the WBC. He's not like these young guys, like the like the Dominican Republic, excuse me. But as you said, the lineup is definitely I guess you can say the stronger part of the USA roster, with so many star names in that batting lineup. You even have Bobby Witt Jr. The Rookie of the Year candidate who's great on the base paths. Tim Anderson, with his electric bat. We talk about Will Smith, as one of the catchers, behind Kyle Higashioka and JT Realmuto. That kind of combination as well. Still don't know why Higashioka is playing for us, but hey, I'm not complaining there. But I feel like, in this game, you can definitely say that the DR, obviously, they have one of the best rosters of all time, and we'll get into it in a little bit. But for this United States team, after, kind of expectations, I guess, rose as we got closer to this year's WBC, because the last one was supposed to happen, and then COVID and, all those issues. Nobody liked COVID. But, it's definitely a big improvement for this roster. Definitely going to be a candidate to win it all in the WBC, which would be very, very exciting to see. But if they will, they're going to have to run into this team, the Dominican Republic. I've never seen a team so stacked with MLB players. I believe there is only, I think, 2 players on this Dominican Republic roster that are not active MLB players or on an active MLB roster. And the 2 guys are Robinson Cano and Gary Sanchez. Those are the only 2 people that are not on an active roster in the MLB. Everyone else is. I mean, you go through all the guys here. I mean, Brian Abreu, Alcantara, Diego Castillo, Johnny Cueto, Luis Garcia, Christian Javier. Well, obviously, there was Jose Leclerc, but he is obviously withdrawing as well. Rafael Montero, Hector Neris, Gregory Soto, Francisco Mejia, Willie Adames. I just like Cano, Cruz, Rafael Devers, Wander Franco, Manny Machado, Ketel Marte, Jeremy Pena, John Segura, Teoscar Hernandez, Eloy Jimenez, Julio Rodriguez, and, of course, Juan Soto. Ari, it's a shame that, obviously we have some Mariners on this team, a few of them. So, obviously we love to root for them. But in terms of this country's superiority here, do you agree with me? Do you think this is the best roster that we've seen in a while in terms of just how many star names are on one team defending your country? I mean, my goodness, what do you think of this Dominican Republic? I mean, I already know what you think, but do you see anyone beating this team?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at there was because I think that they were just odds wise, they were a pretty big favorite, but the U.S. wasn't that far behind them in terms of odds. But I mean, you look at just the potential starting the lineup of a Marte, Soto, Machado, Devers, Jose Ramirez, Pena, Julio. That just sounds like a MLB The Show type of team that you would put together. And then you have Alcantara obviously leading their pitching, and then starting wise they have Javier, so they have good enough arms given what their lineup is capable of 10 plus runs any given game. So I think barring any huge upset, I think it's pretty clear that we're going to see a DR USA championship, in this event, which obviously will be a fun game. On paper, the DR is definitely, I feel better overall. I think the lineups are mostly comparable. I mean, the DR did just lose Vlad Guerrero Jr. to an injury, which, they're still super stacked even without him, obviously. But yeah, I mean, it would be a fun game between the US and the DR if they do meet up, and they're both the 2 pretty heavy favorites to win it. There's the third best team is way behind them in terms of odds. So it's going to take some David versus Goliath type of upset for either of them, I feel to lose before the championship. But yeah, I mean, on paper, this might be the best team of all time. I feel in the Pro Baseball Classic, just again, purely on paper. But we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the DR team. Obviously, they just lost Vladimir Guerrero, which is a big loss if you talk about in terms of what he brings to that DR team. But in terms of the whole DR team, it's not the end of the world. They still have a great middle infield. They still have some stars. We talked about the fact that they still have Rafael Devers in that infield, who is one of the best third basemen. They still have Jeremy Pena. They still have Marte. They have Segura. They have Machado. They have Franco. They're going to be fine. But you look at this lineup, right? And as you said, this is an MLB. This is an MLB The Show lineup. This is the best of the best. You have both Juan Soto and Julio Rodriguez, two MVP candidates in each of their own leagues, playing on the same team. They have Ketel Marte, Manny Machado, solid infielders. They have the reigning NL Cy Young with Sandy Alcantara. They have Brian Abreu, who's a hard relieving closer for the Astros. Montero, who throws hard. Javier, who throws hard. They also have Diego Castillo, who's a solid reliever for the Mariners. They have talent, right? And I feel like that's the thing with this DR team that kind of pushed them to the next level. The fact that when you try to find holes in the Dominican Republic's team, there aren't any. They have the depth to do it because obviously they have Devers and Machado. Both are third basemen. Like, they have the depth there. They have Julio Rodriguez, Teoscar Hernandez, Eloy Jimenez, and Juan Soto all in the outfield. And those are starters on all MLB rosters. They have depth in the infield immensely. And and the pitching staff is one of the best that I've seen in terms of, a WBC roster. So it's hard for me to say that, this DR team won't win but the only way the Dominican does not win is if they beat themselves, right? And I feel like the Dominican Republic, have the advantage of just being so giftedly talented with all of these guys, right, that are representing their clubs and obviously not injured, but say Vladdy wasn't injured, that would make this team even more elite as they already are. So it just comes to show you that this is definitely one of the best of the best. It's definitely going to be very difficult for anyone, especially in their own pool, to really beat them. But in a stacked pool like this, where you have, Puerto Rico, Venezuela, it's unfortunate that only two teams advance. And one of those two teams, either Puerto Rico or Venezuela, and it's not like they don't have like any stacked rosters. The Puerto Rican roster, it has, it has some solid names. It has Jose Barrios, Edwin Diaz, obviously. It has it has Marcus Stroman, obviously representing the DR. Has Francisco Lindor. I think they would have had Correa, but I think something happened to where he's not playing. They still have Martin Maldonado along with Melendez and Christian Vasquez. They have Javi. So they have like some solid pieces as well. So you can't ignore that. And then you have the Venezuelan team, which also has some solid pieces. They have Jose Alvarado, Julio Chachin, Pablo Lopez, new Minnesota Twin, Herman Marquez, Jesus Luzardo. And that's just some of the pitching staff. Ranger Suarez, at catcher, they have Chirinos, Salvador Perez, Omar Narvaez, Jose Altuve, Luis Arias, Miguel Cabrera, Eduardo Escobar, Luis Rengifo, Andres Jimenez, Gino Eugenio Suarez, Gleyber Torres, and then obviously one of the bigger names in the outfield for this Venezuelan team was Ronald Acuna. And, there was some rumors at first that he wasn't going to play, but now he is going to play. So they have him in the outfield along with Santander and David Peralta. So, this is definitely going to be the region to look at, the pool to look at. And I believe this is Pool D. Pool D, which is in Miami. And, if you're Nicaragua or Israel, look, no disrespect to the Israeli team, right? But, when you see a manager as Ian Kinsler, it can get interesting. But, just a lot of these guys are in the minors. Just not really. I mean, they have Garrett Stubbs. Garrett Stubbs, great name there. They have Jock Peterson, obviously. We know how he can hit the ball well, but other than that, not really great for the Israeli team. And then finally the Nicaraguan team, and it's just a bunch of guys in the minors or who play for the local Nicaraguan team. At least Mariners have a couple prospects in there, but I feel like there's a big drop off in Pool D between the top three and then the 4 and 5. Ari, I just want to get your quick thoughts on the Puerto Rican and Venezuelan matchup. That's going to be battling for second place, obviously, in that second pool and for that second spot in Pool D. What team do you think has the better edge? Obviously, you can say Team Venezuela with all the names they have, but Team Puerto Rico, obviously, they have, I think, been to the championship or like at least past the second round in like most of the recent WBCs. Who's going to make it out of the second team between the Puerto Rico and Venezuela?
Yeah, I mean, it was the last World Baseball Classic where the U.S. beat Puerto Rico in the championship, so they made it to the last championship. But I feel like Venezuela has the better bats. I feel like they're pretty comparable pitching-wise. Like you said, it's unfortunate that only one of them probably will get to go out because you feel like if you look at all the rosters, I feel like Venezuela, because it's two from each, so it's 8 teams. I feel like they are two of the 8 most talented rosters, in this World Baseball Classic. But because only 2 out of each pool get to advance, probably only one of them, like you said, will advance. So I feel like I probably lean Venezuela. Just the better lineup, I think, is the biggest difference for me. But like you said, they're both filled with MLB talent. It's just that, they get overshadowed for good reason by the DR and what they have. But besides arguably the U.S., no one comes even close to comparing to the DR, so you can't really take that away from them, obviously.
Yeah, you're right there. I feel you in all aspects. I mean, in terms of teams that are close to the DR, it's obviously the United States, and then one of those 2 teams behind. You mentioned the last time the WBC was played, Puerto Rico did finish second to United States in the championship game, and Puerto Rico has the ability to get to those later rounds of WBC. But you look at Venezuela, and they are gifted talently, but it's just a shame that they're overshadowed with how gifted talently the Dominican Republic team is, and the fact that they're all in the same group in Pool D. So it'll definitely be interesting to see who can emerge as maybe one of the favorites if it's not Dominican, or emerge as the second team behind the Dominican as well in Pool D. But I want to get Pool B real quick here. And the one team I want to talk about is Japan. And this team is being really slept on. I mean, obviously, the big name is Shohei. We know that he was going to be there. We already knew before he committed that he was going to play for Team Japan. And he is the pitcher / hitter / I can do everything. There was a video clip of him, and I think it was a scrimmage, or I think like a exhibition where he hit 2 homers. One of them was off of one knee. He's just having fun out there. He's definitely someone you want to watch out for. They also have Darvish, who, on the mound is, very gifted talently. They have Masataka Yoshida, obviously, just signed with the Boston Red Sox, big name out of Japan. And then obviously Lars Nootbaar, Lars Nootbaar, who I saw a video of him, and it was so funny. He was trying to, understand the Japanese language. He didn't know what was saying, but he was just having a good time. Obviously, a lot of these names are either guys we don't know or guys we haven't heard of yet. I do know there is one guy on this middle infield. I forget his name, but it's someone we need to watch out for because of his ability to hit the ball. I just forget what his name was.
Yeah, I think it's Murakami.
I better say I think it's Munetaka Murakami. He's a dangerous name to watch out for. Other than that, I feel like Japan has a very sneaky roster in a kind of, I guess you can say, weaker pool in Pool B, which has Australia along with Japan. It has South Korea, it has China, and then it has the Czech Republic, which is, oh boy, the Czech Republic have day jobs. Ari, we look at the Team Japan right now. Other than, do you expect Japan to win Pool B in this kind of weaker pool to say?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the odds for the winner of the pool, they have the highest odds. They're minus 650 to win Pool B, whereas Dominican Republic is minus 250 to win Pool D. Obviously, a bit tougher with Venezuela and Puerto Rico, and Pool C, USA minus 450. So Japan minus 650 is the best odds, so to speak, out of all the favorites in each of the four pools. I think with Japan, it's, they have some good hitters, like you said, but it's also the pitching as well. They have the back-to-back winner of the Cy Young in Japan on them, and then they have another guy that throws like 100 and had a 19 strikeout game last year. So they have like 3 or 4 like ace level starters that are, I think they're going to be, there's the 2 main guys. That's that one back-to-back Cy Youngs and then the 19 strikeout game. I think are going to be eligible to be in MLB in the next 2-3, the next few years, I want to say. So you have those guys, and then also, like you said, you have Darvish and some other MLB talent players that are on the team, and then you have the infielder that you talked about, and then like you said, Yoshida. I think Seiya Suzuki had to drop out, I believe, so they won't have him. But yeah, obviously Japan, just baseball in Japan, like outside of the U.S. and the DR, is like up there in terms of the best talent, in the world for baseball. So, obviously all the eyes are pretty much on the DR and the USA, but Japan is probably right up there behind those two, if not right behind those two.
Yeah, Japan definitely has one of the better, I think maybe a top 5 roster is safe to say for that Japanese roster in terms of who they have with Shohei Ohtani and how he has at least just changed the game of baseball for MLB. And, they have Yu Darvish, who's a solid reliever. And we talked about Yoshida, who can hit the ball well. And, we get to see what he can do for this, for the Boston Red Sox when he finally joins that roster. But yeah, you mentioned the fact that they do not have Seiya Suzuki. That's a big loss for Japan, obviously. I believe he got injured. It was super, super late, but it's still a big loss there for that Japan roster to say. But in terms of the talent, I still feel as if they're definitely going to be one of the favorites in a weaker pool. We don't even get to see, most of the Chinese players are just all of their own guys in terms of what China's bringing. And then same for South Korea, except South Korea does have 2 guys that are in the MLB right now. Obviously, Hae-Sung Kim, who's on the Padres, their shortstop, and then Tommy Edman, who is who's on the Cardinals, who is their middle infielder as well. So I feel like maybe South Korea may finish second in this one, but it's definitely going to be interesting to see what the depth of this group is, considering it's not really strong at the top, and it's getting a lot weaker at the bottom in terms of all the teams that are competing in this pool. And then we go finally into Pool A, where it's all starting tomorrow. We have Chinese Taipei, we have the Cuban team, we have Italy, we have the Netherlands, and to round it out, we have the Panama team. Right now, I definitely say the Cuban team may be a slight favorite in this. I just think all the talent they have there is pretty self-efficient there. A lot of guys in the minors, but they have Matt Festa. No, excuse me, that's the Italian team. Excuse me, I was looking at the Italian team, not the Cuban team. The Cuban team, obviously, have Rayones Elias, well-known Mariner, unfortunately. They have returning out of nowhere Yoenis Cespedes. That's a name who for some of us old MLB fans, that's a name we know true and well. Obviously, this team has Luis Robert. They have Yohan Moncada, so they have both the Cubans there. So that's what the Cuban team looking like right now in this pool, in Pool A early. Most of the Chinese Taipei team is mostly just guys from their own country or from their home region, I should say. And that's kind of the same for the Italian team as well. But they have Matt Festa. Obviously, true Mariners know what Matt Festa brings. They have Matt Harvey. That's another name who came out of nowhere, right? Obviously, this team also has Vinny Pasquantino. He's on the Royals. I believe you can definitely say that the Italian team is definitely a great candidate to win this region as well, with Nicky Lopez. And it was kind of funny. I saw this video on TikTok. I think it was like this morning, about how the Italians, I think, had an exhibition with, I think, Chinese Taipei, and the Chinese Taipei team were intentionally hitting Nicky Lopez, like trying to throw at him, not like, obviously when you're trying to hit the bat, trying to swing the ball, like they're throwing at him. And maybe we'll see some cultural differences be expressed on the field. But Ari, we finally look in the you can say the weakest pool out of all of them, in Pool A, with the Netherlands. You have Team Panama, which the Panamanian team, not too many big stars. They have Ivan Herrera. They do have Christian Betancourt, on the Tampa Bay Rays. Not that many great names. Do you have a winner in Pool A? Right now, I say Italy. You can also say Cuba if Yoenis Cespedes is playing with Yoenis Cespedes back in like 2015 or whatever. And then maybe the Panama team. What do you like in this Pool A region that kicks us off tomorrow?
Yeah, Cuba's a slight favorite heading into the tournament. That's probably the direction that I'd lean for prediction. But then Netherlands, then Italy. Those are the top three favorites. I'd probably lean Cuba, but this is kind of one of those pools where you kind of wish that there was some, like, one of Venezuela or Puerto Rico, kind of one of those teams in this pool that so that both those teams, like we said, could advance. But I'd probably lean Cuba. I think Netherlands has definitely a shot. Those are probably the two teams. Those are the top two favorites. And I think this region is probably pretty chalky in terms of pretty predictable. I think who's going to win and who might come out of it.
Yeah, you can definitely say that this pool is definitely one of the pools where you can definitely at least try to predict who's going to come out, or you can kind of predict, you can definitely say the Cuban team is definitely one of the favorites. You can say Italy, which is how many MLB veterans or roster players they have. Same for Panama as well. But you never know till you know, and who knows? Maybe Chinese Taipei can surprise and turn a few heads in the WBC. But obviously, as we said, this all starts tomorrow with first pool action between Cuba and the Netherlands, starting tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Pacific time. Pretty late game for the East Coast veterans out there, but this is just where everyone's located, and obviously the Cuban and Netherlands are playing all the way in Taichung, so very, very Asian. Obviously, that's probably daytime over there, but obviously, as the games start to the WBC for the United States does not start until Saturday, when the United States does play Great Britain in their opening round in Pool C. And the Dominican Republic, they don't have to play until Venezuela, and that'll be a fun game on FS1 on Saturday as well. But that's the early look at the WBC. We'll be keeping up with some of the big updates as we get along to the week, in terms of who's surprising where, and just maybe even some big highlights that come out, because a lot. And the best thing about the WBC, a lot of fan support. We get to see all people from all different sides of the world just cheering on their team, and it gets pretty rowdy. So that's what I'm definitely I'm definitely excited for, just to see the excitement of the WBC, and just how many people turn out, and just all the excitement that goes along with it. And even with all the opt-outs, it's still going to be one of the best baseball tournaments that we've seen in a while. So I'm definitely very excited. But Ari, do you have anything else you want to say real quick?
Nothing. I think that was good for today.
Yeah, so we're going to come back Wednesday with another episode for you guys. But we thank you guys for liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing. We're just doing our thing here, and we appreciate all the love that we get in return. Wednesday, we're going to be coming back with another episode, and then obviously as we get closer into March Madness, Friday is going to be one of our last days to kind of do our one more bracketology to where we look and see, you know, as we head into the final weekend of, I guess, Champ Week, heading into March Madness selection. So on Sunday, you know, kind of wearing some of these, you know, bubble teams lie and all of that fun jazz. But, you know, that's going to be another episode for us. That's Ari. I'm Kareem. We will see you guys Wednesday for our next episode. See you later, guys.